华人商铺被抢是确实有，他们从侧面进行了敲门、敲锁，半分钟左右、1分钟左右就把一个店的东西他们抢光。这个完全统计应该也不下于10来箱。
This is a special report on growing tensions in Africa. In recent weeks, protests and social unrest have shaken several countries, raising serious questions about China's role on the continent. What follows is a documentary-style analysis based on open sources and eyewitness accounts. Looting, protests, and sudden unrest, an eruption of anger is spreading across the continent. Welcome to China Undercover, where we reveal the stories Beijing would prefer to keep hidden. From the crowded streets of Angola to markets across Africa, discontent is rising. What began as small demonstrations has escalated into mass disturbances, forcing many Chinese workers, shopkeepers, and investors to close their businesses and leave in fear. The narrative of China's win-win partnership in Africa is starting to unravel. For years, Beijing promoted images of highways, stadiums, and railways funded by its loans. State media highlighted friendship, opportunity, and prosperity. But behind the ribbon cuttings lay growing resentment. Since the early 2000s, billions in Chinese loans poured into Africa through the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. Large projects were built while oil, copper, and cobalt flowed back to China. Tens of thousands of Chinese traders and workers arrived, and governments desperate for growth initially embraced it. But reality soon turned sour. Many projects were built cheaply, earning the nickname tofu projects after collapsing within years. Debts ballooned, straining national budgets and limiting basic services. Local workers were sidelined as companies imported Chinese labor instead of hiring locally. Markets flooded with cheap goods, undercutting African merchants. Reports of harsh working conditions and environmental destruction spread. To many Africans, Beijing appeared less like a partner and more like a predator. The first spark ignited in Angola, once a showcase of Chinese investment. Billions in oil-backed loans had entrenched Chinese influence. But when the economy faltered, frustration boiled over. Protests escalated into wider unrest, with thousands accusing Chinese companies of taking jobs, land, and livelihoods. The anger quickly crossed borders. From Zambia's copper belt to Kenya's wholesale centers, from Nigeria to South Africa, demonstrations spread. Crowds called for the removal of Chinese businesses. Shops were ransacked, construction sites attacked, and many foreign workers retreated into hiding. Videos of groups chanting "Africa for Africans" spread rapidly online, fueling copycat protests. In Zambia, Chinese-owned mines faced strikes. In Kenya, delivery trucks were overturned in Nairobi. Hashtags like Chinese Out surged on social media, uniting fragmented grievances into a continent-wide movement. Governments scrambled, deploying police, urging calm, and promising to protect investors. But reassurances fell flat as images of burning factories and clashes on the streets spread across the world. This is a special report on rising unrest in Africa linked to China's presence. What you're about to hear is a documentary-style analysis based on open sources and eyewitness accounts. China's embassies have gone into crisis mode, issuing urgent advisories and coordinating evacuation flights. Many Chinese nationals are already leaving, describing the environment as increasingly unsafe. At the same time, Beijing's state media portrays these events as isolated, emphasizing images of friendship and cooperation. But on the ground, the picture is far more complex. China's vision of partnership in Africa is facing serious challenges. Leaked messages from private Chinese chat groups reveal a climate of fear. Shopkeepers lock themselves inside warehouses. Construction sites fall silent as workers disappear, and families rush to airports with little more than a suitcase. Across the continent, African voices are growing louder. In Nigeria, activists accuse Chinese mining firms of polluting rivers. In Kenya, leaders criticize contractors for bypassing local labor. In South Africa, unions strike against textile imports that undercut domestic industries. What links these events is a growing conviction that China's footprint brings exploitation, inequality, and corruption. Unlike sporadic demonstrations in the past, today's anger is coordinated and amplified by digital networks. Videos of unrest in Angola inspire protests in Nigeria, while online posts from Kenya spark demonstrations across borders. Local grievances are converging into a continent-wide backlash. This storm has not appeared overnight. It is the product of years of unmet promises, heavy debts, and unbalanced partnerships. The core triggers are clear: unequal trade structures, debt burdens that squeeze national budgets, and the cultural friction created by imported labor. Beijing once branded its investments as win-win. Railways, highways, stadiums, all presented as proof of friendship. Yet on closer inspection, contracts often favor Chinese companies. Workers are flown in from abroad, and local economies are sidelined. Small businesses collapse under the pressure of ultra-cheap imports, and frustration deepens. Even when projects are completed, many deteriorate quickly. Bridges crack, highways erode, and stadiums fall into disrepair. These so-called tofu-dreg projects have become symbols of broken trust. Citizens see billions borrowed, debt mounting, and infrastructure literally crumbling, fueling skepticism about Chinese investment. Debt itself has become a flashpoint. From Angola to Kenya, governments owe billions to Beijing. Oil, minerals, and even airports have been tied to repayment agreements, draining public budgets and forcing cuts to schools and hospitals. People fear that national assets could end up in foreign hands if defaults occur. To many, this resembles a new form of colonialism, not through soldiers, but through contracts. Beneath the politics lies the human impact. Chinese workers often live separately, rarely integrating with local communities. Africans watch as jobs are filled by outsiders, resentment builds over unequal treatment, and reports of discrimination spread. Social media accelerates this divide. Local complaints go viral in hours, uniting frustrations across borders. What was once isolated discontent has now grown into a continent-wide pushback. For many Africans, what Beijing calls partnership increasingly looks like domination. The backlash is real, and its consequences are only beginning to unfold. Jobs are disappearing, families are under strain, and public trust in leadership is eroding. Across parts of Africa, what is unfolding is not only a geopolitical struggle involving China, but also a human crisis that is touching everyday lives. Markets that once thrived on Chinese imports now stand deserted. In Angola, traders who depended on wholesale goods from Chinese shops find themselves cut off as supply chains falter. Prices for clothing, electronics, and even basic tools have surged, weighing heavily on low-income families. In Zambia, the closure of Chinese-run mines has left thousands unemployed, intensifying poverty and frustration. The unrest that has erupted is not only political. It reflects the struggle of communities caught between falling incomes and rising costs. For Chinese migrants who once sought opportunity in Africa, the reality has also shifted. Many families now live in fear as demonstrations escalate. Reports show shopkeepers barricading themselves inside their stores, while in some cities, entire neighborhoods have emptied overnight. Parents try to place their children on evacuation flights, while others wait inside embassies for assistance. What was once promoted as China's African opportunity has become, for many, an uncertain and frightening ordeal. The tensions have left deep scars. Local merchants with ties to Chinese businesses face accusations of betrayal, and resentment has in some cases spilled over into ethnic targeting. Hospitals have quietly reported injuries on all sides: protesters, Chinese workers, and bystanders caught in the chaos. Authorities have been cautious in releasing figures, underscoring the sensitivity of the crisis. Perhaps the most serious consequence is the erosion of public trust. Many citizens question whether their governments prioritize foreign loans and projects over domestic welfare, leaving them exposed as jobs disappeared. In some regions, with officials unable to fully restore order, local groups have stepped in to enforce rules on commerce and security. Such dynamics risk turning short-term unrest into prolonged instability. The effects are already rippling beyond Africa. Investors are retreating, multinational companies tied to Chinese projects are reassessing, and Western powers are closely monitoring the developments as both a challenge and an opportunity. What was once considered a flagship example of Beijing's overseas strategy is now being viewed as a cautionary tale. This is not just an African story. From Latin America to Asia, similar questions are being raised about the long-term costs of foreign debt, imported labor, and economic dependence. Africa, once hailed as a cornerstone of China's global vision, may now mark the point where that vision begins to unravel. From disrupted markets in Angola to shuttered mines in Zambia, the crisis has become more than a regional issue. It signals a global shift. The lessons extend far beyond Africa. When economic promises falter, instability often follows. The question now is whether leaders, both local and international, will adapt before history repeats itself elsewhere. Across Africa, many Chinese companies and shops that once symbolized opportunity are now struggling to survive. From large-scale mines to small retail outlets, closures have become increasingly common. Supply chain disruptions and rising tensions have left businesses unable to operate normally. For Chinese entrepreneurs, years of investment are vanishing almost overnight. For local communities, the disappearance of these businesses means both economic loss and social disruption. Mistrust between local residents and Chinese business owners has deepened, complicating cooperation. What was once framed as a mutually beneficial partnership is facing its most severe test. The future of Chinese commerce in Africa now hangs in uncertainty, with consequences that may extend far beyond the continent.